Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you so very much for joining us this afternoon. It's an absolute delight for us to host this collaboration between School Libraries Group Scotland and Scottish Book Trust. So my name's Kirsten, I'm Sector Development Manager for SLG Scotland, and we're also joined by the SLG Committee and colleagues from SBT. So if you need anything throughout, please don't hesitate to post a message in the chat. As you're aware, we are recording, so it's entirely up to you whether you keep your camera on or off. If you could please keep muted for now while we go through the presentations, but as I say, we would love to hear your voices shortly. And captions are also enabled, so you should be able to toggle these on or off according to your preference using the toolbar in Teams. And with that, I believe I'm handing over to you, Graham, from SLGS.
Oh, why not? Yeah, hi and welcome. Essentially, I co-chair the School Library Group in Scotland alongside School Librarian Extraordinaire Shona Page. And we're here today to chat all things Story Deck, which was a resource that was given to every secondary school in Scotland from Scottish Book Trust. So these are designed to be conversation starters. They're designed to spark those conversations about stories, about books, about films, music, whatever it is, but to get those students or classes to open up. And I know, having spoken to lots of librarians around the country, that loads of people are using these really well and finding lots and lots of uses for them. And I know that some others might have had some story decks turn up and say, what do I do with this? How do I use it best? And how do we share ideas around these things? And so we thought the best thing to do was to invite the people along that designed it. And so we have Heather and Catherine along, who we're delighted to have along, who were involved in the design and the process behind story decks and the entire concept. And so we are hoping that this event promotes lots of discussions. So first of all, SBT are going to talk about story decks and how they envisage them being used and the design process behind them. And then what we would love to have is lots and lots of questions and things. We've also got some SLG members who are going to share how they've been using the story decks in libraries and in classrooms so far. And then I think we'll turn the recording off and have lots of Q&A. So at that point, you can feel free to turn your cameras on and get asking questions without them being recorded. But essentially, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Heather and Catherine, because I think that's the ideal place to start, is where story decks came from. So over to you guys.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to have this many of you joining us. What a nice opportunity for us to come and speak to you. So yeah, as Graham says, I was going to talk to you about Story Deck really from its beginnings, and then Catherine will take over in the middle to talk you through some of the support materials that she produced to help you get the most out of the Story Decks that you will have received if you work in a secondary school in Scotland. So I am going to share my presentation with you and we'll get started. And I'm hoping that some of you are tuning in from school and maybe have your decks beside you. You might want to reach for it and just have it. I think it's quite nice to just have it to hold and run through while we're speaking. So here we go. So yes, so my name is Heather and I work in the school communities team at Scottish Book Trust. So we believe that a love of reading and writing can change lives. And in 2023, we were given funds from our Reading Schools programme to explore new ways to support teen engagement with reading for pleasure. The idea was to move beyond other interventions that we delivered previously and look for new ways to make a difference. At the time, Dr. Charlotte Webber was working with Scottish Book Trust as part of a joint research project with the University of Edinburgh, looking into teenagers' motivations to read and why there is a decline in reading for pleasure seen around S3 or year 9. For anyone working in England. A recurring theme that came from Charlotte's interviews with teenagers in schools across Scotland was that they did not have the language they needed to describe the stories they were interested in finding. So even with access to wonderful adults like you, willing and able to support their reading, the teenagers felt that they were struggling to find the right book for them because they couldn't articulate what it was that they like about the stories they've already enjoyed, whether those be books, films, games, or TV. So we could see that this was an issue of language, of critical thinking and communication, but also self-reflection. So we quickly settled on the idea that if you don't have words, you can still engage with an image. We knew that what we needed were a set of images to prompt self-reflection on stories that could act as a catalyst for conversations. And we were aware that sectors such as therapy and counselling often use card decks of images to tease out difficult to articulate feelings. Tarot is a form of self-reflection where each individual reads different meaning into the same set of images to realise some form of personal enlightenment. So could we make a sort of tarot deck that helped a learner understand their own preferences and share that with a professional to then be matched with a book? So working in multiple high schools, we set about exploring whether teenagers would naturally respond to images. We devised a range of activities, including asking pupils to create cards of their own that represented a film, a programme, a game or a book that they'd really enjoyed, and then share those with the group. We also took photographs as well as illustration to explore whether one was more effective than the other. In the photo that you can see here, in the centre is a picture of a forest, which was drawn by one of the pupils at a workshop at Craig Royston Community High School in Edinburgh. She'd drawn it to represent the feeling of being lost and isolated in a horror story. She was a horror fan. And during discussion with her group, one of her classmates said that to them it looked like a beautiful, peaceful place to connect with nature. And then another one said that it actually made them think more about climate catastrophe and the damage that we were doing to our planet. So without prompting, the students were often doing exactly what we had hoped that they would do. They were each reading into a single image, a vast range of different things. And then from then on, the forest became our touchstone for the project. And it was actually the first card in our image list when we produced our prototype. So using what we'd seen during our workshops, we devised a list of images to cover as wide a range of stories that teenagers had already told us that they were engaging with. So we were thinking about narrative features, about a range of genres, character types, the feelings generated by engaging with the story. And the rule that we set for ourselves was that every image in the deck had to have at least 2, but preferably more, possible interpretations, just like the forest. It had to earn its place in the deck, and it had to be ready to mean a huge range of different things depending on the teenager looking at it. So having established with testers that illustration was more timeless and neutral than photography, they preferred that, we used Vecteezy to source images that we could then tweak and manipulate to our needs. And we produced a prototype that went back out to schools with instructions on how to run a testing session. So we left the prototype with our schools for about 2 months, and we had learners and teachers both complete feedback surveys. So 95% of product testers agreed that they enjoyed using the story deck. So that was a good start. 75% of product testers agreed that the cards had helped them talk to other people. 91% agreed that it was clear of how to use the cards, and 83% told us that a book, a film, a TV show, a content creator, a web series, a game was recommended within their group discussions based on the cards and the conversation that flowed. So the feedback confirmed to us that we'd made a really strong and useful product, and we used pupil feedback on the specific images in the prototype to swap some of them out and improve them. The pupils had told us that we were missing a monster card, I remember. They told us we needed more animals. They told us that we needed more people. We'd consciously left people out of the prototype largely because we thought that they might be too prescriptive, but no, they wanted more people. And they didn't like the colours that we'd used on some of them. So all of these things, because we'd taken the images from Vecteezy, we were able to manipulate ourselves and tweak the designs to improve them. So we made all of those changes based on the pupil feedback. We wanted to talk about the resources. So Catherine's going to run you through this because Catherine is the brains behind all of the support material. So all of these things that she'll tell you about, I hope you've already seen, but if you haven't, Catherine will tell you why you should check them out.
Thank you so much, Heather. So yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine Wilson-Gary. I am the Learning Content Manager here at Scottish Book Trust. So where I came in with Story Deck was really thinking about resources that might be useful so that librarians and teachers and pupils just feel really supported using Story Deck. So just to kind of give you an overview of what we've got available, there's a webinar, and that kind of introduces Story Deck and the research behind it, some of kind of what Heather's covered today. It kind of goes through a couple of the cards using them as examples, you know, that kind of information about like the forest could be something spooky or thrilling, or it could be about spending time in nature. So do feel free to go and watch that, or equally, if you've got colleagues you think would just benefit from I think it's roughly like 12-minute introduction to Story Deck. Please do go and have a look at that. We also have a couple of downloadable activity packs. One is for using Story Deck either in a school or library, and it's designed that you can use it right from one pupil up to kind of groups of pupils. And I'm going to go slightly more in depth into a couple of the activities in a minute, but just with the idea that they've kind of been designed to support you right from that moment you are just starting to introduce Story Deck for the first time. You're taking it out in front of a group of young people. What does that look like? Right up to hopefully using it kind of more long-term for longer activities. The second of those two downloadable packs is designed to look at using Story Deck to inspire creative writing. So similarly, we go right from using it to kind of prompt short free writing sessions right up to thinking about using it to kind of structure plots and edit writing. So if you've got any young people coming in who are interested in writing, please do use this. And I should say that I guess part of the goal is that it is that really that kind of writing for pleasure. So it's all with that in mind, rather than it being kind of formalized or about creating the perfect story. It's hopefully really designed to be a kind of more, I guess, enjoyable, flowing activity. So do have a look at that. There's also a downloadable PowerPoint that you can use to introduce Story Deck. So again, you can use that with young people, or you can use it with staff. So I've put like a slide from that on the slide here, and you can see that what we've done is part of the way it kind of explains how Story Deck works is we've put in examples of books, films, games, things that alongside kind of different cards that you might use to summarize the feeling of that text. So you can see like we've done Heartstopper here, which was a delight because Heartstopper covers so many different cards. But please do feel like you can use this as a template. So if there's a specific book that keeps being borrowed or brought up in your library, or a specific TV show that you know the young people in your library are talking about all the time, include the cards that you would use to describe that text. Invite your pupils to do the same. Similarly, if you're going through this PowerPoint and you've got pupils maybe disagreeing with our interpretation, like that's a really great conversation structure. We're really keen that it's not one set definition of each card. So even though it's come from Scottish Book Trust, they could absolutely have a different interpretation. So yeah, hopefully that's a really good kind of conversation starter as well. And lastly, as you can see on the slide, you can also see that we've just got a PDF of all the cards, and you can use this partly as kind of keeping track of all the cards, because we're aware that you might want to just keep a sense of making sure that you still have them all and that you've not lost any. You can also print it as a poster, and you can also use it to print off, if you want to print off any kind of specific individual cards to use for your displays. We really encourage that. Well, I will talk a little bit about print and design in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to unpack the activity pack a little bit and show you two of the kind of different activities that we've got on offer. One is a kind of icebreaker or an introductory idea where you have pupils just share their initial response to a card. So hot or cold, you go through the cards, you sort them into hot or cold piles according to how you feel about them. If pupils are in groups, they can compare their piles to each other. hopefully, I think you can see this is quite a deceptively simple idea. So you're just asking pupils those initial reactions, not to overthink it. But then as the kind of adult in the room, you can then kind of dive deeper, spark a bit more of a conversation. Oh, why did you like this card? Or does it remind you of something? Or you weren't as keen on this one. Is there a reason behind that? Allowing peers to kind of compare their picks. So where do they cross over? Where are they different? Hopefully you can see as that's kind of starting that conversation around genre or theme, even if we're not putting a pupil on the spot. Because when we spoke to librarians about using Story Deck, a really good kind of quote that came out of that was a librarian saying, if you ask a pupil to pick a book, sometimes for some pupils or young people, that can feel like quite a high pressured decision, especially if they are less engaged with reading, especially if they're less familiar with visiting a library. So I think hopefully an activity like this, you're still gaining all that information about what they are interested in and where they're at on their journey, but you're removing the pressure from the pupil somewhat. We also have longer activities. So you can see the second activity we've got on the screen here, which is the kind of judge by the cover activity. So this says pull some books from your library shelves, making sure you include ones pupils may not be familiar with. Only looking at the cover, choose 3 cards that you think capture what you think the feeling of that book will be. Then you read the blurb and decide if your card choices change. So again, this is a kind of extension. You're asking pupils to interact with the books in your library, connect them to the cards, hopefully starting to bridge that gap between being able to use the cards and thinking about what clues to look out for on a book cover or indeed a blurb as well. Lastly, I just kind of wanted to talk about this idea of Story Deck as a visual language. One thing that was really useful was, I mean, I only got to spend a day in Forfar Academy, but it was so useful just getting to talk to the librarians and the children and seeing how very quickly they had evolved Story Deck beyond how we saw it in our heads. And I think that's something really exciting that I want to say, is that even if you're using the activity pack, you might notice young people create their own games very, very quickly and just have this kind of innate sense of being able to use it as a way of communicating with each other. So when we piloted Story Deck and Forfar Academy, they really took it beyond our resources and they used the imagery throughout the entire library. So things like they had a wall of book recommendations that used images from Story Deck. They had a sign on the librarian's desk which invited pupils to get a Story Deck prescription, which I really enjoyed. And they also had several shelves where they were just using smaller images of the cards directly on the shelves as well. And something that the S1 pupils were saying to us was they had found that use of Story Deck really helpful, because for them, they're coming into a larger school library for the first time, and it helped them really identify where to find the different types of book, especially when they were kind of newer to the school. So if you've got pupils, maybe they're newer, or maybe they're still developing their kind of understanding of the concept of genre, you're developing that learning whilst also helping them think about the kind of text they might like in the library. And we got the impression it was really acting as a bridge to help them independently move around the library. And I think it's really nice to think about S1 pupils especially, because that's who we're talking to, thinking about how secondary school is a very new setting and a very new way of kind of interacting with school. So giving them that sense of being able to find their way around the library is a really nice way to kind of help them start feeling more confident kind of moving around the school more generally. It's also just a very nice way to encourage that kind of pupil reaction to the library, encouraging the idea of your library, not just somewhere you kind of maybe go and read on your own, but it's where you react to what you've read, you connect with others over what you've read. So also on our website, as part of the activity pack, you can print these kind of shelf shouters that are in the top right-hand corner. They allow pupils to share a book recommendation, and you can use the images of the Story Deck cards on them as well. You can hang them directly onto your bookshelves so that when pupils are maybe browsing, they're getting those peer recommendations. And we also have a template that pupils can use to create their own Story Deck cards. So if there is a card that they really do think is missing and they would like to add, they can go for it. They can see it as kind of expanding your school deck. And as we showed earlier, you can use all of the images of each individual card from the story deck key. I'm going to hand back to Heather now, I think, just to chat a bit more about the kind of distribution as well.
Yes, right. So we had done all of our prototype testing. We had made the changes and we were ready to gift. So between February and April this year, we posted out 3 packs of Story Deck to every single high school in Scotland. So the way that we did that is that we invited you to request your decks initially. So we dealt with all of those people, and 83% of schools across the country requested their allocation of decks. It was phenomenally successful. And then the few people, I think it was 50 something schools that were left over, got it anyway. But we just had to write to them saying, you didn't ask for this, but we hope you'll find it useful. But the reason that we did it that way is that we really wanted to make sure that when it landed, you were expecting it and that you were ready to get using it and access all of Catherine's resource materials. We also made Story Deck available to public libraries who requested sets of it. So we contacted the local authorities and they were able to reflect on which of their libraries they felt would benefit most, the libraries where they knew they had strong engagement with teenagers, and we posted some sets out to those people too. So there are some in pockets of public libraries around the country. We continue to receive really strong feedback about how useful the deck is in engaging learners in organic conversation about narratives in all mediums, and several librarians have told us that they've seen book borrowing increase, which is incredibly exciting. They've told us that it's helped them get to know their learners a little bit better, and that they're using the deck regularly at the bookshelves to do one-to-one recommending, just like Catherine highlighted there at Forfa, where Emma is getting the kids to pull out 3 cards and she's giving them book prescriptions like some sort of incredible magic trick. She's brilliant at that, and it really works at Forfa, especially when the kids come in daunted, not knowing where to begin. What we hope to do this year, now that you've all got your decks and are hopefully finding them useful, is develop some specific Story Deck for transition resources, because we think that there's particular impact, as Catherine touched upon, or a particular potential for S1. And so I hope that we've got something ready to distribute to everybody by spring 2026. And following a huge number of requests, we're exploring a way to make a version commercially available, although this is very complicated due to funding, and there are no definite plans in motion, but we have had serious conversations about it, and it's not an idea that we've given up on. So I say that only because I suspect some of you were going to ask me, because I get asked a lot. We do want to make it more readily available so people can buy additional sets. I wish it was really, really easy, but watch this space, and certainly everyone who's received one will be the first people to find out, if and when a commercial product is ready for you to buy. So I just wanted to end on a quote about the difference that it's making, so that it's not just me telling you these things. We did a survey. Lots of you were very kind and got back to us in that survey, and that's been extremely helpful. If you haven't yet, but you've still got the link lurking in an email somewhere, please do, because it's not too late. And the responses that we get on evaluation surveys like that really help us when we're trying to make a case for funding to make more of these sorts of resources. So if you didn't fill it out the first time, search in your inbox and fish it out. Perhaps actually I might recirculate the link following this, just in case anyone now has feedback that they want to share. But you'll see here that this librarian has said, I think it's opened up a lot of conversations with the pupils. So far, we've used them at book club in a few different ways. First, they picked 3 cards to represent a book and we had to guess what it was. Then they picked cards that they liked and told a short story about them. We use them as book prescriptions too, which is great. They might not tell me the sorts of things and themes that they're interested in, but when they pick a card and I can see the image they've chosen, it's much easier to help them pick out a book. I had a couple of other quote, pupils who are a bit reluctant to talk about books can often be encouraged into it by starting off talking about the games or movies that the cards remind them of, and then we can segue it into reading. It's nice to use them to talk about their likes and dislikes, or about genres too. And someone else said, visual prompts are very useful, as many of my pupils are unable to read but can express themselves through symbols and pictures. Story deck cards are a flexible way that they can flexible in the way that they can be interpreted by individuals, and there are no wrong answers, which my pupils really like. The more we use them, the more activities we think of to use them for. They've helped me talk in a new way to the pupils about books and reading, and they've opened up loads of different conversations about what they're interested in and created a buzz around book talks. So that's all I was going to share with you. I just thought that was quite a nice way to end. We're absolutely delighted to receive feedback like that, and I hope that some of you have had similarly positive experiences. If I haven't said anything that you were curious about, I'd love to take some questions about it, but I think mostly Catherine and I were hoping to hear about your experiences of using your decks since you've had them. Yeah, I will stop sharing my slides.
Thank you very much. I think a lot of what you've said there and what you've seen in Forfeit and in other schools and the feedback you've got is what I see mirrored in my library as well. I also loved the phrase that story decks can be visual language, because I when mine arrived, I just put them on my desk. And then I wandered off and forgot about them for like a day. And I came back at lunchtime and my pupil librarians happened to sit at my desk and they were mid tarot reading of anyone that was walking past the desk. And I hadn't even like unboxed them yet. I was like, okay, these are going to be popular. And they are. I also liked how that was really professional, and now we're going to go full chaos because we haven't really tested the next bit. However, it's going to be fine. Not only that, I am going to, you know what? While I sort this out, I'm going to give everybody these 3 cards. You have the mouth, the horror mouth. You have the raven, and you have a lighthouse. Your job while I sort out the technology right now is to find a book recommendation that goes with those 3 cards. Put it in the chat. Right. And that gives me 30 seconds.
Oh, that's a tricky one. There must be.
It's a tricky one. Those are the first top 3 on my desk, I promise.
Yeah, that monster mouth is the one that we had to add in on feedback from the kids that we didn't have any monsters. Yeah, I mean, also use the chat. Tell us about how you've been using them, if you've had some successes, or if your pupils have invented any particularly good games. Let's take a look at the chat. So, Kateri, I've had a lot of success using them with the book prescription idea. Excellent. That's really good. Yeah, I think. Oh, The Lighthouse by Alex Bell. Yes, I've not read that. I've read other Alex Bell. That's a good suggestion.
Do you know what? I'm totally cheating here, but actually I used a really similar pool when I was pulling together. We're trying to put Story Deck in like a few of our other resources. And we did these discussion guides we do teen book discussion guides every year that are designed to like kind of prompt conversation as like a kind of book group thing. But we did one for the SQA new set text, and we did like a very similar, I think it was the skull instead of the kind of spooky teeth, but it also had the lighthouse and the raven for one of the Kirsty Logan short stories that's just been added to the SQA. Cool. So when you pulled out that combo, I was like, oh, this is like somewhere in my brain.
Teams is struggling with my permissions, but
I'm glad people like the spooky teeth. I like the spooky teeth too. So this is why you test things with kids, because they tell you the good stuff that you're missing. Yeah.
Okay. I have the disaster of telling everyone that Teams is telling me to reshut and reopen and to get my permissions sorted to be able to share my screen. However, while I think on that one, I'm going to tell you, I was actually very quickly made a slide just before this because I wanted to convey one thing in terms of the story deck, which was a story that I had someone in my library yesterday who came in at lunchtime, a girl who's in a lot, reads a lot, and I know quite well. And she came in and she said, I want a book, but I don't know what I want to read. And I was like, well, you normally read murder mystery, don't you? She's like, yeah, but I want to read something different. And I was like, okay, what is it you want to read? And she went, I don't know how to say it. And I was like, okay. And I tried to prompt sort of, oh, maybe this, what about this? This is something similar. And I said, okay, let's do something different. And I got the story deck out and I said, what cards do you think of it? And she picked out 6 cards. And with a little bit of toing and froing, she opened up, and what she actually wanted was, I don't want to go too much more. She wanted some books that looked at different issues and looked at different traumas because of what she was going through, and she wanted something that she could identify with, and sort of went straight to sort of the classic books on empathy and things, and she went over a couple of graphic novels and a couple of books based purely on, I think she chose 6 or 7 cards, and there was a couple that just automatically hit my brain, because there was the 2 people hugging, there was the ones that you associate with grief and loneliness and anxiety, and I was like, wow, this can actually be a really, really powerful resource if you get someone on their own. And that's often how the best, I think as librarians, we can often get a class, and I think Story Deck can work with a class. You can do quite a lot of different class activities, but I think sometimes we often get 30 kids in the library at once, and within 30 minutes we're supposed to have a deep connection with them all, find them all a book, scan 30 books out, have 30 different conversations, and it's really, really difficult. And I think one of the top tips that I ever give anyone asking, well, how do I often it's like, how do I get boys that are disengaged, or how do I find a kid that doesn't like reading? And often in that session, you take the teacher aside and say, that kid's not going to find a book today because they're playing up for their friends, or they're trying to act like they don't like reading. Can you send them down on their own next time you've got an English period? Just send them out 5-10 minutes. And I will actually try to connect with them and see what it is they like. And that's where I found Story Decks really, really good, because those kids, they're the ones that don't necessarily have the language to say what it is they want, or to articulate exactly what sort of books they might find interesting. And the Story Deck is that conversation starter that it's supposed to be. Now, one of the things that we have in this committee is someone that really, really, really likes Story Decks. I know this because I sat on a train next to Anise on the way back from Dundee to Glasgow, and the entire conversation for the entire train journey was her telling me how she uses Story Decks in her library. And she was so enthusiastic, and she really wanted to be here, and she couldn't. And she's made a video.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anaïs Kizak. I used to be a school librarian, but not anymore. I just moved a job recently. And I am a committee member of SLG Scotland, UK, and IFLA school library section. And I'm here to talk about the use of the Story Deck in school library, and especially in my library. So let's go. All right, so I use the Story Deck a lot in my school library, at least once a week during the Storytelling for Wellbeing Club. So it used to be a club at lunchtime, so roughly 40-45 minutes top. And the students, they used to have a lot of resources options they could pick from. And they decide one of the resources they want to use, and then we just go with it. And of course, their favorite was the Story Deck. So they love the Story Deck and always wanted to use it. So I have developed a lot of activities around the Story Deck, more than what Scottish Book Trust can offer. They have a fantastic resource kit coming with the deck. I really encourage you to have a look at it and then to expand and make it your own. So I'm going to talk about 5 activities I used to do with the students. So the first one is a very simple one, as how do you feel today? So the students will have the cards on the table, and they will have maybe a few seconds to have a look at it. and then they will pick 1 or 2 cards to represent the emotion, what they are feeling today, what they are feeling right now. And then if they want it, if they wish, they could expand and explain why they picked their card. If it's a new group and they feel shy, they don't trust each other and all that, so don't force them to share. If it's a group like mine, they know each other a lot and they were very comfortable with sharing and explaining why they picked this card. So it's really up to the group and up to the students. So it's a very short activity you can do as an icebreaker and a starter, and over 5-10 minutes. And you could also use it as a closing activity to say, and now, how do you feel? And see if the cards change or not. That's one of the first activity. The second activity is called the Revisited Hot or Cold activity by Scottish Book Trust. So Scottish Book Trust, they have a fantastic activity called Hot or Cold, where basically students pick a card at a time, have a look at it, and decide if it's gonna go in a hot pile or in a cold pile, and they can talk about it and explain why, explain their choice, maybe start to argue and all that. In my version, because the students could not decide if it was hot or cold or positive or negative, we decided to come up with a spectrum. So is it getting closer to positive or warm, or is it getting closer to negative or cold? And they will still argue, they will still explain their vision, and then they will vote as a group on where to put the card on a spectrum. So it's a very nice way for everybody to interact with each other, to work on their argumentative skills, and to explain why they decided to put it on the extreme opposite to the other person's view, for example. So it's a very flexible activity. You can do it for 5-10 minutes and then switch to something else, or you can really expand on it. Usually this one, with my students, they really love to take their time with it. And you can just start with 2 people. You don't need more than that. So yeah. The next one is guess the character. So you have different versions of that. You could do guess the character, guess the movie, guess the book, guess the teacher. So each and every participant will pick. I used to do 3 cards about 1 movie or 1 character or 1 book, and then the other participants have to guess which character it is. So that takes a bit of time, because they need a bit of time to think of the character they want to do, and then it takes some time to also guess each other characters, movie or books. So it's 5-10 minutes, a bit more, again, very flexible. And again, you can start with 2 people, 2 students, and then if the group expands, the group expands. The next activity I have is use the story deck as story cube. So you might be familiar with the story cubes. Basically, each and every student get a cube. On a cube, you have a symbol. They roll the cube, and then they have to include the symbol in a story. So I do the same with the story deck. I give a card, a random card, to each and every participant. And we usually start the story by once upon a time, and they have to include the cards in their story. So once upon a time, a family, they were having fun in a park. And then the next person will pick a card, and they will have to include the card in a story. So the family in a park were also taking out the dogs and cats. And then you will go, and then the next person will say, okay, the family after walking around the park feel a bit tired and they're going back home to watch TV all together, etc., etc. And everyone has to contribute to the story. If someone feels shy, they can first listen, and then if they feel to join the story, they can join in, or in the second round for the second story, they can join in. It's very, very easy, very simple. If someone is stuck, the imagination is a bit dry, they can have a look at the cards. They're very pretty cards, very nice cards, and they can just pick an emotion, a character, a color, and try to put it in a story. Make it as flexible and comfortable as possible, especially at the beginning, maybe for warm-up as well. Make it simple for them. So that could be a 10 minutes game. And again, if you really want the story to expand, it can take up to half an hour easily. And then you could ask someone to write down the story. You could record the story. You could really make a storybook out of all the stories you've created. So there is a lot to do. And I would say this story cube with cards story deck version is good with 3 people, I would say minimum, and then as many students as you have. The next one, all right, it's to use a story deck as if they were tarot cards. So someone will be in charge of the reading. That could be you, the librarian, or if you have any tarot fan in your group of students, that could be this young person. And a simple reading is the first card represents the past, the second card represents the present, and the third card represents the future. And the person doing the reading will explain. So in your past, you had a lot of joys, a lot of friends, you were happy and everything. But then something happened, which make the present a bit more lonely, a bit more sad. But then you found refuges in comic books and superheroes, and so that's a very simple way to use the cards as a tarot. And as well as the students can really come up with a meaning. They can decide, okay, this card means this, and you can really expand this activity. And you could even decide, okay, today we're going to give meaning to these cards all together, and next time we'll do a reading all together. And they usually have a lot of fun giving meanings to the card and doing all the readings. So yeah, again, in terms of time, this one can take up to some time, can take some time, especially if you decide to expand it. And it's good to do it minimum 3 people and then invite more. In conclusion, yes, so my feedback and impact and observation of this story deck, it's a fantastic tool. It's an amazing tool. It's super well done. It's pretty. It's fun. It's engaging. The students love it. They will ask for it again and again. They will come up with ideas of ways to use it. They will take ownership of it. The shy students will start to feel more comfortable and will want to participate. The students learning English will also really appreciate the pictures and the activities I use that with the EAL group, and they loved it as well. I use that with the reading buddies, where I was pairing a senior student with a younger student to talk about literacy, books, feeling, and they loved it. So it's a very versatile resources. So if you don't have a story deck, ask for one. It's free. If you are a librarian in Scotland, and use it, expand it, read the toolkit from Scottish Book Trust. And we might, at the end of this session today, share with you another document with some more ideas on how to use the deck. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so Anise was asked me to convey just how grateful she is to SBT for that resource, because she was worried that she didn't come across as quite enthusiastic enough in the recording, which I think we can all see that she uses that deck a lot, and that it had a really, really positive impact on her library. Anise has also, as she mentioned there, she came up with the idea that all of the librarians in the SLG committee kind of contribute a few ideas or examples of how we've used the deck. So we're putting that into a document. So once this recording goes live, we'll also email out to everyone a wee document, mainly with most of Anise's ideas, but also how a couple of others of us have been using them. And you can see that some of those are the ideas that Catherine produced from SBT, maybe with your own flavour, your own twist, making it work in your setting. And so, yeah, I think hopefully people have taken away from that some really good ideas and some ideas how they might implement them in their library. There is still time for some questions, because I really wanted to get feedback from people to any questions or any ideas of how they've used them in their library. I have come up with my own book suggestion from my own 3 cards. I have taken the lighthouse slightly literally and have gone for shadows. This is internal monsters, and this is just a raven, and I've gone for when shadows fall by Sita Paramakari, should you wish, for my recommendation. But if anyone has any questions, you can either pop them in the chat, or you can unmute, come on camera. I'm sure either ourselves or the lovely folk from SBT would love to get some feedback or to answer any questions.
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions here. So can we buy additional decks, and if so, how much are they? So it's not commercially available at the minute. And because of how it's funded, even if I was sitting on some, I'm not permitted to sell it to you. That's for complicated reasons you don't need to worry about. But at the moment, sadly not. But we are talking about it because the reaction to Story Deck has been much bigger than I think we could even have hoped for. So I promise that if we get there, you'll be the first to know about it. Similarly, if we find ourselves in a position to produce more and distribute more to you, I realise 3 is not great with a massive group, and we've had lots of people ask for extras. So not now, but we hear you, I suppose, is the answer to those questions. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Baird. Yeah, I know. But you know, I think that's such a massive treat for Catherine and I to sit here and hear about how it's been used in the wild. You know, you make something and you hope it's going to be good. And I thought Anise's video was just an absolute treat. Like, I'm so pleased that all of you have been inspired to nick some ideas, and I think so have we. Actually, we're in the office tomorrow. I might get some decks out. We've got some sets of our own that we can play with. Maybe we should have a go, Catherine.
Should. I think one of the things I've thought about, it's actually something you said, Heather, about sort of the possibility of using them in transition and things, and I think they'd be brilliant for students coming up. And I was thinking, I've got S6, S1 kind of buddy sessions where, you know, we do paired reading, but it's nice to break it up with something different every now and again. I think the story deck cards could be really, really useful if I crack them out occasionally in there. And yeah, they quite obviously lend themselves to storytelling. They quite often, if you put a group, I think someone's put in there, I think it was Shona, and I've completely lost it. Essentially, anytime she puts them down in front of a class, they automatically drift off into storytelling with them straight away. And I think that's true. I think if you put them down in front of people, they just spark interesting conversation. I think people start to use them to tell stories and things, but you can also use them. So I tend to go with the first time of the class, go quite quick activities with them as sort of all groups, being like, right, I want you to find 3 songs that are 3 cars that make a song. I want you to, just to try to get them looking at all the pictures and things. I think they're really, really, really useful and versatile as well. And I quite like the fact that you've aimed it as teens. I think the pictures really do come across as aimed at teens.
Yeah. Well, so we've had queries from primary schools who've seen our promo about it and said, can we have some? But they were designed specifically with teenagers in mind. And if I was going to make something for primary school students, I'd want to do it properly. But we're dipping our toe in this autumn and into springtime by exploring, hopefully, with real life human children, transition activities. And so I popped my email address in there, so did Catherine. If you are somebody who feels interested in that, now is a good time to start talking to me about it, because I'm looking for schools to partner with to work with them in their library and then their cluster P7, some of them, on how Story Deck might work for transition, so that if we develop something, it's been developed with input from children themselves, and I have a quantity of decks that I can distribute to those P7s to make that possible. And we're pulling all of that together right now. So if you are keen on transition and you are somebody who gets really into sort of transition activities when you're doing your visits in the springtime, please email me and we'll see if we can do something. It might be that we get inundated. That would be nice, but I won't be able to work with everybody if it's massive. But yes, I mean, I'd much rather test with people who are keen than me put feelers out looking for keen beans. So if this is you, email me.
I know there's a few people in the chat that will do exactly that, because I can see that one of them has already put a thing about transition in there. I love the way that anything that happens in a library automatically ends up being Dungeons and Dragons, so that someone has already put the story decks are going to be great for Dungeons and Dragons group. Thank you. Has anyone else got any questions? I'm aware that we are approaching 5 o'clock. Or any feedback, any idea, or any examples of how you've used them in your library, or any more questions that you might want to ask? Hopefully, as I say, we will compile some. Obviously, the SBT resource of how to use them is up already. You can find that on the SBT page. I think it's probably linked earlier on in the chat. But that's a really, really good resource. It's a really good way of starting out. My classes have loved the design your own card activity as well, or did they try to design a story by designing their own cards, and I think we will try to pull that SLG document together, just as a few ideas from Anise and the rest of the committee about how we've been using them in libraries, with just a few ideas and activities and things that go hand in hand with those from SBT to give you some more ideas. But yeah, that has absolutely flown past, other than that bit where I faffed around not being able to get technology to work. Thank you, Kirsten, and your iPhone. But yes, we'll be around for a few more minutes if anyone does want to stick around to ask any questions. But hopefully people find that interesting, and hopefully you'll be inspired to crack up your story deck cards and get using them.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
And just a huge thank you to Heather and Catherine for joining us today as well.
It's
and to Anise.